as we've discussed within our sort of private little group, there's actually I hadn't realized how much content or how many podcasts there are about Japan out there.
Basically, this is one of the main reasons to talk to you. Like I said, we haven't talked one-on-one before, just on Twitter Spaces, and wanted to introduce you to my audience. So I want to hear, like, who's Joe? Where do you come from? How'd you get into podcasting? How do you get to Japan? And what do you like about
Mm.
podcasting? And why should people listen to your podcast? Let's give them some reasons to check you out.
Oh, reasons to listen? Hmm. I mean, I'm not very good at self-promotion, so I'm probably going to say I wouldn't bother listening. But if that's the kind of if that's the kind of self defamation, I always say defecation, but I know that's not the word.
It's an
Deprecation, that's it. If it's the sort of self-deprecating, I struggle to say humor, but it's basically I just talk about my life and what's been going on in my life, which is often quite a lot, actually. I do get myself out there and do a lot of stuff. So if you're interested in hearing about sort of real life in Japan and in I would not say rural Japan. It's a small city. It's a medium-sized city I live in Kanagawa. Then yeah, I think I like it
Hmm, cool.
because it's my own voice. Doesn't like the sound of their own voice.
Of course. Well, that's the important part, is that you're having fun, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't record on a very regular basis. I used to record weekly. We used to have two hosts, Casey, who's of the Bean Pod
Hmm.
fame. So we used to be co-hosts and have a regular slot on a Friday night, and we'd drink a lot of beer, maybe some whiskey, and we'd just, you know, steadily get more inebriated as we went through the sort of 2 hour podcast that we generally recorded.
Nice.
And then we just whack it out into the ether with no editing whatsoever. Um, so it's a lot different now because it's just me. So it's more like 1 hour, and it's not every Friday that that I record. It's just whenever I can, really.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and that's just the new stuff. That's just relatively recent stuff. I had a lot going on before that as well. Um, I have a daughter who's now 1.5 years old, and she's great and a constant source of entertainment, as I'm sure anybody who has children knows. But then it's also partly the reason why my recording has become more sporadic, is because I'm up at 5 or earlier every day. And so if I'm up if I'm up late recording a podcast, then I'm destroyed for about 2 days. It's fine, but she's great, and she provides a lot of content. That's her middle name is content. And then also, yeah, my wife and I are trying to buy a house currently, and the I would say I don't want to say pitfalls because they're all predicted and foreseen, but if you've bought a house in Japan that isn't a brand new house, then there are a lot of things that you need to consider and research. And so I'm sort of going through that process at the minute, but I'm not really a Japanese speaker or certainly not a reader. So a lot of the hard work and the graft has fallen on my wife. Um, and so there's a lot, there's a lot going on there as well. And on top of that, I'm a musician, and I have a job, and I do this podcast. So yeah, a lot of things.
Well, you've just given me 10 reasons to listen to your podcast. I mean, who doesn't
There you
love
go.
cute kids, dad life,
Yeah.
houses? This is going to make a great segment because there are so many people who contact me. I'm an American lawyer, and people contact me all the time say they want to buy a house in Japan. So when you say you're talking about due diligence, all these things, um, for people coming from overseas, looking at a house to buy in Japan, maybe turn it into an Airbnb, maybe turn it into a vacation home. What are the things to look out for?
I would say that the number one thing you have to look out for is the age of the building. And if it is built pre 1982, which the one that hoping to buy is, then it falls under a different earthquake proofing code. And there's nothing legally stopping you from buying the house at all if it is built pre 82. And there's nothing legally, I believe, that you have to do in terms of earthquake proofing. But for your own peace of mind, it's worth checking about so what we're doing is we're checking the. I can only speak from my experience. We're checking the structural integrity of the original structure, which is wooden, and then you also have to consider the foundations, which means how it's actually connected to the ground, the earth, if it is, and what that earth is. Is it rock? Is it sedimentary rock? Is it permeable? Is it going to be a liquefaction risk? In an earthquake, what can happen is the earth just basically turns to liquid, and that's not good. So, you don't need to be an expert to know that that's not good. Luckily, this house that we're looking at is not in that situation, but also you have to consider the fault lines. Um, this house is actually quite close to a fault line, like most places are in Japan. But yeah, if you're coming from overseas, I would say, and it's a story as old as the hills. Don't don't be don't be fooled into thinking that a very, very cheap house is is great, because there's a lot of expenses that you don't have to spend, and of course you could move into it, but you would be at risk in the case of an earthquake. So I wouldn't recommend it.
And that what was that year? 1982, is that right?
Pre 1982,
Mm.
there were different earthquake standards. That because of the was it the Hanshin earthquake, or was that later? And then there was one in 2005 that also then changed the standards of earthquake proofing, where metal rods were introduced into the anchors, so that anything built before 82 basically isn't anchored to the ground. It's a structure sitting on top of rock, so it'll slide around in an earthquake. And you also have to be aware of landslide risks as well.
Mm.
But honestly, my podcast is funny.
Not talking about death traps or money pits.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
but
you and Casey, so you and Casey, and I've listened to Bean Pod. I've listened to both you guys together, listened to your recent one. And I'm going to put a link down in the description so people can go check those out. But you guys had like a really good rapport, right? You must have been
yeah,
before you started the podcast.
yeah. I mean, we work together, so we've been working together for about 6 years now, and we've known each other for literally that amount of time. But I think, well, right from when I joined, he was working. I work at a university, and he was there for a decade before I joined, something like that. So he's quite well established, and I came in as a newbie. But I think we hit it off in our shared love of music and beer and sort of off-color jokes. Um, so we hit it off pretty well. And he's very small, and I'm very
Okay.
big, so we immediately make a kind of comedy duo.
Mm.
Plus, he's American and I'm English.
Well, the opposites always make a good, you know, the in UFC or MMA, they say that styles make good fights, right? So
Hmm.
two partners that are totally different. And I heard the first one where you guys are talking about hometowns,
Mm.
and that was interesting. So, and I'm really excited that you started uploading on YouTube because that's my main.
Yeah, yeah. So we use oh, it's boring, but we use a certain platform to stream all of our or to release all of our podcasts. But because we were paying initially, but since Casey left and I have the Okozakai system, which means I get pocket money basically from my wife. I don't want to fish. I don't want to spend half of that on podcasting. So I went free, and unfortunately, after something like 48 days or something, they delete whatever's earlier than that. So, as you release new ones, they're there. And there's only ever 3 or 4 in the rotation. And we've done, oh, well, we started in 2020, I think. So there's kind of 4 years worth of podcasts that have basically just disappeared. And I'm very slowly trying to start again and put them onto YouTube. But because they're not no longer available on the the podcast releasing system, whatever it is, uh, I have to manually download the MP3 and then convert it to an MP4 and then upload the MP4 to YouTube. So
Mm.
it's quite a laborious process. So it probably will be sort of one a week for the next 4 years.
Okay. I when I first started this iteration of the podcast, I did audio,
Hmm.
and then YouTube announced that they're really promoting podcasts. So I would just take the thumbnail from that episode and convert that to an MP4. It ended up being like 6 or 8 gigabytes sometimes,
Wow.
because I put a lot
Yeah.
of engineering into the audio to try to make it sound clean and stuff. And I don't just upload just the raw. I go in there, I take out like when I cough or say or
Yeah. I
but
did that. I used to do that before I had a baby when I
mhm,
had time. I was quite a meticulous editor actually. I would go through because I studied a master's in linguistics and a culture and linguistics, and part of that is there's a sort of microanalysis element where you take a not very long audio clip, could be just 5 minutes, and you microanalyze every split second of that almost. So every utterance you transcribe or you write, you type it out, but it's literally to the how many milliseconds did they pause between these words level. So I got used to I quite enjoyed that. I got used to going really deep into listening and with editing the podcast, I got quite good at when there's a pause being able to chop out a period of silence and then make it sound like there's no editing happened. So it's just like this the conversation has or the utterance has flowed through smoothly. So I really enjoyed that, but I can't do it anymore, unfortunately. So now it's I don't even know what I said half the time, and I'll listen back a few days later and I'll be, oh God, did I put that out to the world? It's a voyage of discovery.
exactly. Well, I noticed a lot of things when I first started making videos, and I would script every word out. But no, sorry.
Mm,
My first video, I just talked to the camera and tried to edit that into something that made sense. And then I would then I learned, okay, script everything. So I scripted everything and I tried to do that word for word. And between sentences, I would take a big breath.
mhm.
I thought, okay, that's annoying. So I would cut that out. And then I'd find out
Yeah,
my head would move like a millimeter between cuts.
yeah.
This is driving me crazy.
Yeah, you
And
got the continuity stuff then. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so then I learned you could just zoom in, right? Okay, it looks like a sentence. So, but I did music before I did any video. So, and I learned to I learned several different really simple music editors, just sound editors, not engineering style at all. But so when I got into video, I would look at in the editor, I look at the sound wave and
Right. Yes.
try to get the noise. And then I noticed I would start off and I would start off really high, like my voice would be really loud, and then I would kind of trail off. And so I started editing that so it sounded like
Oh no, that's a little, yeah, that's getting very deep. I don't even think professional professionals would do that, and that's very deep.
it's just things that annoy me,
Yeah.
my own idiosyncrasies that were annoying to me, and I thought, well, I can do this better. So now I've learned to breathe without gasping, and
Hmm.
I've learned to
Oh,
it,
yeah.
if I make a video and I make a mistake, keep the lighting and everything the same. So when
Hmm.
you go back and do an edit, and I've got a place on the floor, like the lines on the wooden floor, I stand the same place. So
Wow.
I'm not moving around, but
Yeah.
it's really a study in you got to be brutally honest with yourself when you make video.
Yeah. I haven't made too many. I've made a few videos in the past. Mainly just me, yeah, like me singing and playing the keyboard, which were really cringy. And, I sort of thought twice about putting them out there, but I'm just kind of, yeah, throw it out, whatever. I'm not shy. I'm not ashamed. So I probably should be. But even when I look back at them and I think, well, it's okay. It's fine. No one's it's only been watched 5 times anyway, and 3 of those were me,
Yeah.
so who cares?
When I upload to my original channel is just my name, Tracy Greenwood, on
Mhm.
YouTube, and the main channel is Weekly Fascination, which people are watching right now. But I would upload a song, and it'd be like an original or a cover, and I noticed that it was automatically set to comedy. So I was like, "Why is it doing this to me?" So then I learned you can fix that, but
Mine was automatically set to shit. Uh,
I
AI, right? Judges,
that's right.
judges.
It's harsh, man. AI has no feelings. So, um, so you do music. What instruments do you play?
I played primarily I played trombone, but that's not really something I would ever film directly because who wants to hear that? Um, and I played a little bit of piano, keyboard, and I sing as well. I do sing. I know a lot of people sing, but yeah, I'm pretty good at it. So just
Good.
kidding. Yeah, I do. I've blossomed. I was very shy as a youngster, and I didn't like singing. But then at high school I studied music, and at A level, which is sort of up to the age of 18, and part of that was being forced to join the school choir. So I had no choice. I was forced, and a performance of Carmina Burana, Carl Orff, the ba 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 da 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 that one. Um, and we had the BBC Young Musician of the Year on percussion. We had a few percussionists. We had a professional opera singer or two join us for some of the solo parts, and I absolutely loved it. It was great. That kind of made me think, oh, maybe singing isn't so bad. So since then, I kind of got a bit more into
Good.
it.
I think in
Anyway,
the mm,
I haven't made a singing video or sang for a while because of the baby.
mhm.
And this is the time when I would have done it, but I'm probably about 3 meters away from her now, which is why I'm speaking in slightly hushed tones. Yeah, so singing's out of the question.
Yeah. Well, I've sent my music to people in the States before, and they say, like, you need to, like, express yourself more. You need to, like, sing louder. And all my songs, I'm in a small apartment in
Hmm.
Tokyo playing guitar, and then I play the bass, and, sometimes I add keyboards, the computer does the drums, and then I'll sing into the mic, but I'm aware that I have neighbors.
Mm.
So that kinda led me because I grew up on Van Halen,
Hmm.
and I even played
Is
in
that an island?
no, no, Van Halen, the music
Eddie. Yeah.
Eddie, but, I grew up on Van Halen, I can't do exactly what he does, but I used to practice on an electric guitar with no amp. So when I'd play
Okay.
live, people would say, like, "Wow, your attack is really hard,"
Mm.
because I had to play so loud that I could hear myself.
Yeah.
So when I play
Yeah.
live on a Marshall amp, people are just like, "Whoa, dude, you really had that hard." But now I've got more into like a Jack Johnson type of groove where you don't have to
Uh-huh.
shout, you can just kinda almost just tell them a story?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely. I think I'm more of the Jack Johnson end of the scale than the Van Halen end. But yeah, it sounds like it's not a similar story, but I have two brothers, and they both play guitar, electric guitar, and I would say they're both pretty virtuosic on it as well. They're really excellent guitarists, and yeah, my eldest brother was in a band at uni, and I think they all had long hair, it was quite heavy metal, but now he's definitely much more the Jack Johnson end. That's maybe you mellow a little bit unless you're Mick Jagger.
Yeah. Now, that's true. Now, have you written any songs for your wife?
I have actually in the past, um, never performed anywhere other than in the marital
Mhm.
boudoir, but no, just the one. I'm worried what the lyrics would be if I wrote one now.
It's funny because my personality is more like you, just outgoing. I'm not really funny. My humor is more dry.
Hmm.
But when my family watches my videos, they always comment like, "Dude, you nailed that one. That was hilarious." And other people
Hmm.
go like, "Oh, I didn't realize that was a joke." You know.
Yeah,
But I guess if I wanted to be a big YouTuber, I'd try to be more, outlandish. But my songs are always really melancholy.
oh
People say,
yeah,
"Oh, who wrote that? That's so sad."
yeah. I
And
think that it lends itself to the smoother style,
Mhm.
the more chilled style, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. And so when I tell people I wrote that song, and it's like, "Oh wow, but you're a happy guy." Like what's with the music? And I think it's just another, we have different parts of our personality, right? And
Yeah,
I think that just comes out when I play guitar. So I don't know.
yeah, and also, I mean, I know what you mean. For me, a lot of the songs I sing are the slower, sadder ones, but that's because I'm not very good at the piano. And if I had to play anything faster, I wouldn't be able to do it. So that's why I choose the ones where I can just hold on a chord for a few bars while I sing. But yeah, no, I don't write songs. I've written a lot of poems, which is a kind of a feature on the podcast. Not all of them are. Well, no, I'm going to rephrase that. None of them are very good. Um, but occasionally other moments. And I was thinking about, perhaps when if I do buy this house that we're, hopefully going to buy, part of it, one of the main reasons I'm very keen to buy it is there's a lovely little side room that's going to make a great studio, and I've got it all planned out. So I'm going to bring my keyboards in there and trombone and everything, and hopefully buy a new mic because mine's broken, and and then I might start putting a few of those poems to music if I can, might be funny because that will come under comedy on
Okay, there we
YouTube.
go. I mean, I did write a comedy song one time, and I'm not gonna discuss it. It was politically incorrect, but
Hmm.
and I did. Do you know Kill Tony, the comedy podcast?
Don't.
Okay, so it's Tony
Sorry.
Hinchcliffe. He was in LA, then he moved to Texas, but he
Mhm.
does a comedy show where he has a bucket or a hat and he pulls out a name, and that person gets to come up on stage for 1 minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's got so big. They did a show in Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Yeah, and but they usually do it at a comedy club in Texas. And I I was watching the show. I lived in LA when he was there, and I would go see him, and my friend convinced me to put my name in. I got
Okay,
pulled.
I can see where this is going.
My name got pulled, and I bombed on stage. It was so bad. And then the comedians were roasting me, and my friend told me
Mm,
afterward, because he was really into the comedy scene, not a comedian, but a big fan. And he said, "If they roast you, that means
hmm.
they like you."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If if
And
they
then so you get up for a minute to perform?
Mhm.
Is that the idea?
Yep. You do a 1 minute set
I
on
see, I
yeah,
see.
yeah. And so
Oh
you
my
have
God. So
people who
you've got, well,
yeah, you have people who've been,
I was going
doing
to say you've got a minute now. Do you want to go ahead?
oh, no. No, no. I'm not
I
funny.
like you, so I'll roast you as well.
You can just roast me anyway. Like there's plenty of material there. So, but speaking
I'll
of
just do
roast,
it on Twitter later.
Okay, yeah, you can roast me on Twitter. That's what it's for, right?
Yeah.
What's what's X without some mean tweets, right? So, but speaking of Twitter, the Gaijin Podcast Collective, we're both charter members, and we're all promoting each other's
Yep.
podcasts, being guests on each other's podcasts. And let's talk about some other podcasters. So, I first interviewed Kurt because he was talking
Hmm.
about bringing a dog to Japan, and I thought, wow, I did a video about dogs, the most popular dogs in Japan, and then I thought, wow, that'd be really good supplementary. Learn how to bring a dog to Japan because you know a lot of my audience is in the States, and a lot of them want to come here. So I thought, okay, well, let's get this and
Yeah.
explaining. And then Kurt and I we got along so well. Like, dude, we got to talk again, man. This is so fun, And I talked with John, the Ohazas podcast,
Yeah.
just so
Hmm.
easygoing and fun. And then I was on Jeff's podcast.
I I listened to both of those, by the way. Just yeah.
Oh boy, that the one with Jeff that ended up being almost 4 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
That was
I th
crazy.
Yeah, that was on his podcast, right? On Deep
Yeah.
in Japan.
Mhm.
Yeah, I listened to that too.
And well, thank you. You have a lot of stamina. I uh I use Zoom and it gives me a 40-minute time limit, so we got like 13 minutes, so we're good.
Oh,
But,
okay.
it makes me be more concise.
Mm.
I try to split things up into segments, so but Jeff and I were talking about the driveway conversation where the podcast is so good that you pull up in your driveway in the car and you've only got a couple minutes to go and you finish the podcast in
Yes, yeah.
and I said, well, I hope nobody's listening to this in their car in the driveway, especially in the garage, So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that could be dangerous.
could be very,
Yeah.
very don't listen to podcasts in the garage if your car is running. Yeah,
Don't podcast and park.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I've it's as we've discussed within our sort of private little group, it is there's actually I hadn't realized how much content or how many podcasts there are about Japan out there, you know. And there's quite a lot. It's almost overwhelming when you get to know people and you kind of want to listen to everything they put out, but then you only have so many hours in the day, and it's hard to kind of stay up to date necessarily. Um, so, but the good thing is that it's not like you need to do any sort of quality control, because I think everybody that I've encountered and listened to, they make really good podcasts, you know, and that each of them are different in their own way, and YouTube videos. And so, you can just kind of dip in. Okay, I haven't listened to Ohazasu for a little while. I'll listen to one of those, or Kevin's put out a new podcast. He's got 3 or 4 podcasts going. He's putting new one out. I'll listen to that. So it's quite nice to be able to dip in and out of different people's podcasts. And of course, Paprika Girls
Mm,
Not podcast, which is
not
also
a podcast. Yeah. So yeah, that's the one person I haven't had the chance to talk with one on one is Ricky.
mm,
Oh yeah, and but she has so much deep knowledge of Japan. It's
oh yeah,
crazy. And she explained it on a Twitter space a couple weeks ago is that the tea ceremony was her entree into all these different parts of Japanese culture where you learn about tea, you learn about the implements, you learn about the wagashi, the sweets that go with it, then the scroll, the calligraphy, and the people, the stories, and she's got so much knowledge that I need to get her on the podcast too. So
absolutely. I had the good fortune of having a night out with her actually in Kanazawa. She came over to visit Noto, and she stayed in Kanazawa, so we had a nice meal and a couple of drinks together. And yeah, she's every bit as you'd expect, really, from if you do listen to her speaking on a podcast, or if you've seen her on the television, or just a general X Twitter output. She's exactly like that, and she is incredibly knowledgeable about so many things, and such a nice person. And I'm looking forward to listening to your podcast with her
Yeah, I gotta
if you can
schedule
get
that.
her on.
Gotta schedule that, yeah. And then, so Tony, we've got Tony now. He's in the podcast collective. He's um, based in Hawaii, I think, but he's walking from Kyoto to Miyajima.
Yeah.
He's doing
Wow.
the little segments on Twitter, and then I'm forgetting somebody. There's also Uncle Dave.
Uncle Dave, Uncle Weed.
Hmm. And
Yeah, Dave Olson. Yeah, he's got a whole load of content, especially if you go through his Instagram and his website. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. His personal archaeology.
yes, well, I've shared his website with a lot of people who are looking at buying homes in Japan. He did a whole segment on, due diligence and stuff. So
Mm. Maybe I need to read that. Can you send me that link as well?
yeah, mhm, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Who am I forgetting? We just added a new person,
Matt,
Matt. He's got a great podcast talking about
I
AI.
haven't listened yet, but I will.
My gosh, his episode 181 on spy cars
Mm.
blow your mind.
Okay.
Mm.
I have a tiny mind, so it won't take much to blow it, but I'll have to be careful, listen with caution.
Yeah, that's right. Use headphones so nothing pops out. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
good, good. So, what's next for you? Just more podcasts, or
Yeah, I mean, we're in the, like I say, we're in the throes of buying this house. It's very on off at the moment. We're still waiting on some further earthquake checks. And it's dependent on demolishing a third floor of this building, etc., etc. But so I think that's next for me is the house purchase, and then of course, everything that goes with that. And then we're also, I mean, okay, breaking news here, exclusive for your podcast slash YouTube channel. Uh, Gorgonella and I, that's my wife,
hmm?
we're trying to have another baby,
Oh,
and so we are imminently going to implant some. We're going through IVF
hmm.
again. This will be our maybe our seventh time through IVF. And we're gonna, yeah, so we're gonna have an implantation soon. We've got some eggs to stick in there, and so that could be another thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's big.
Just a small thing
Oh, is
coming, yeah.
that how your first baby was born as well?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So on the podcast in the past, maybe in about 3.5 years' time, you'll get to hear this. But we went through several cycles of IVF, and we had a couple of successful pregnancies that were miscarriages. So I think we've had three miscarriages in total, and one since our daughter was born as well. So, and that was about 13 weeks in. So we kind of we're well versed in the disappointments, but we're pretty happy-go-lucky people, so we don't dwell on it. We don't, that's just it. It wasn't meant to be, and we just keep plugging away. So yeah, it's all through IVF. Um, we're old, basically, but it's not best time to do IVF if you are old, but for us, it's the best option. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, good.
the Japanese government does offer quite a lot of incentives and financial help with that. So,
Hmm.
you know, why not?
Yeah, really. Exactly. Well, where I live in the Minato ward of Tokyo, there's a what would you call it? Stipend for new parents. They give
Yeah.
a lot of allowances. I'm not sure what they are, like tax allowances, money for diapers, money for
Hmm.
stuff like that. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
Japan, when I was doing audio podcast, I had a statistician who made a documentary called Birth Gap, and
Hmm.
that's a really good podcast. And after this one, but he talked about this is not just a Japan phenomenon,
Right. Yeah.
in lots of places.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm from the UK, so it's the NHS, and there's a lot of help there as well. But it's a good place to be at the moment if you're looking for IVF.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest anyone come here specifically for that because you need to be a resident, etc. But um,
But if you're
happily,
in
happily,
Japan and you want to have a baby,
yeah,
there are solutions.
yeah, and you don't even have to do anything together, particularly, which is a great relief for my wife. So there you go. But
You
yeah,
can
there's loads of
just
options.
just be like the Beatles, make your albums and don't even show up at the studio at the same time.
Yeah, it's completely possible.
I'm sure there are a lot of wives that are happy to hear that.
Yeah, not so many husbands though.
No, no. We're different that way. So we got 3 minutes to go. So
Mm.
any word to people who want to hear your podcast? And
Yeah,
how do they find you? Sorry.
yeah. Well, it's a lot better than I've presented so far in this podcast. Um, you can find me I'm on X or Twitter. But the podcast handle is at I Summit to Sea,
Okay.
and which is Ishikawa Summit to Sea is the name of the podcast, which I haven't mentioned so far. So there you go. Teaser
You're
till
so
the end.
humble.
I'm at Kumayama 100
Okay.
on Twitter as well, so you can give me a follow. And yeah, you can get the podcast anywhere you find podcasts, plus YouTube now.
Yeah.
But YouTube currently only has, I think YouTube will have the latest ones
Mhm.
and the earliest ones, and at some point they'll meet in the middle and
They'll
kiss
converge.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's where you can find me. Yeah, or you can come to Ishikawa and you can
Yeah.
visit Kanazawa and just look for a massive guy. I'm 6'5", built like an outhouse, let's say. I like to say I'm built like a shit brick house, but,
Instead of a
which
brick shit
is
house. Yeah.
instead of yeah. So I could crumble at any moment.
Well, good, good. I will put links to your Twitter or X or Twix in the description
Mm.
and to your YouTube channel. I really encourage people to get on YouTube because the monetization possibility. It takes now they've lowered the requirements. 500 subscribers, 3,000 hours. Used to be 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 hours. And with an hour podcast or 2 hour podcast, it doesn't take that many listens to get you to monetization.
Well, I'm only 490 listeners away, subscribers away. So
There you go.
get subscribing.
Absolutely. You have a really good body of work, and a lot of the early podcasts are really fun to listen to. The latest ones are more like, what's going on in Joe's life. And a lot of people want to know what's going on. And I think we've talked about this before, is the authenticity people really enjoy. And speaking of authentic, we got less than a minute. So let's wrap up. I know it's sudden, but
No problem.
I
And
appreciate
we'll say goodbye as well, I guess, because
Okay.
that's the end of
Here.
the
All right.
time.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you.